On this episode of Mothman in the Bible Belt, Provincetown-based abstract photographer Grace Hopkins chats about shooting artsy photographs that resemble paintings, family trips to Wheeling, and her upcoming memoir. Hopkins delves into her life growing up with abstract painter and author father Bud Hopkins and famed art curator and critic mother April Kingsley. She also chimes in on modern art, her dad's work investigating alien abductions, and Carol Rainey. Coming up next.
Welcome to the Mothman in the Bible Belt podcast with your host, Buck Fantastic.
Girl Scout cookies.
Grace Hopkins is a dynamic abstract photographer that travels the world snapping photos of up-close sections of outdoor public art and graffiti. Her photographs resemble abstract expressionist paintings, and get this, she uses her smartphone to take the pictures. Her father, abstract painter and author Bud Hopkins, is from Wheeling. Hopkins spent her childhood surrounded by painters, and as an adult, found herself fully immersed in art. As a photographer, and as an art gallery director working in one of the most artistic and gayest cities in the United States, Provincetown. Join me, your host, Buck Fantastic, for another exciting episode of Mothman of the Bible Belt. It's a collective chit-chat of otherworldly origins. Grace, welcome to the Mothman of the Bible Belt. How are you doing this evening?
I am doing well. How are you?
I'm doing good. Grace, your photos look like colorful abstract paintings, but they aren't.
No, they're all straight photos. I definitely, obviously, was raised under an abstract roof, so that comes out. Most of the people that my father was involved in the 50s and forward were abstract expressionists, and I think that's what I'm drawn to, but I don't paint. I don't draw. I don't make anything. I just take pictures out in the world, things that I actually see, and I don't do anything to them. They're straight images. They're all square because I had started with a Rolleiflex, and I like the square format, and Dad and I used to fight about that quite a bit.
When you take photographs, are you photographing other people's art or graffiti, or?
Sometimes it's like a mural, but it's maybe a 1 inch by 1 inch part of a mural. So sometimes it's graffiti. It's never enough to sort of see what it was. That's the idea. Is there's no footing for the viewer, I guess you would say. So it's just a mark that's made out in the world, a very tiny mark. And then when I print it 20 by 20 or 40 by 40 or some other iteration. But so it's massively blown up, but it isn't changed by me at all. It's exactly what I took a picture of.
So it's perfectly legal. Someone can't sue you later on down the line.
I mean, I've never taken a picture of something in a gallery or a museum. It's always outside in the world. So I figure that's pretty copyright open.
You got into photography in 91.
Mm-hmm.
Why didn't you pursue painting and sculpture work like your dad?
It's an excellent question. So he did try to teach me painting once. He took me to his studio, which was kind of a no man's land for children. This is not where people go. And he invited me down. I probably was 10 or 12 or something. And he got all excited. And he's like, I'm going to show you how to paint. And he had been doing, so this has been like 83, 85, something like that. He had been doing for a long time these guardian structures that were very tight and very shaped. They weren't on a rectangle or anything. And he had this 8.5 by 11 or 8 by 10 little piece of canvas that he had gessoed. And he had it up on the wall. And he's like, this is how you attach paint, and he's showing me by painting on it. And then all of a sudden he started making a guardian structure within the rectangle that was kind of bursting out. And that totally took his mind away from me. And I was completely forgotten. I slowly left and went back upstairs. But later on, I was applying to the museum. What's it called? Not the museum. The Fame School in New York, the Music and Art High School, which was a school that you had to audition into. And at the time, I was interested in acting. But Dad decided that I should have a minor in art. And he decided that he would give me lessons to do this art. And the first lesson was he took a Delacroix drawing that we had on the wall down, and he said, "Draw this." And I burst into tears. And I hated every minute of everything that we did about drawing. And that's how he fell in love with drawing. He was at or fell in love with art, basically. He was at Oberlin and he was taking an art history class, and he would draw the art. He wouldn't make notes, he would just draw the art. And then he realized he liked making the art more than the art history of it. And then Robert Motherwell came and gave a talk about abstract expressionism. This would have been 49 or 50. And Dad just completely fell in love. So he fell in love by making a copy of something. And I absolutely was abhorred by that idea. So I went to the only art school that you could go to at the time that didn't require drawing, because I just don't want to do that. I don't do anything with my hand, really. It's all eyesight.
Grace, your dad was famous abstract painter and sculptor Bud Hopkins, and your mom was art critic, art curator, published author, and art historian Dr. April Kingsley.
Mm-hmm.
Was winding up in the arts predestined for you?
I think it had to be. And, I mean, I definitely grew up amongst them and their friends and went to all the art openings with them. I went to my first art opening at 6 weeks. But when I was little, I would go to these art openings and I would play with my dolls in the window where the artwork is displayed, and people would be like, "What is that, a sculpture?" It's very strange. My daughter, on the other hand, which is kind of interesting, just like generationally, she's now 18, but both her father and myself and her grandparents were all artists or art involved. And she fought against it heartily for years and years. And first semester of her freshman year, she took jewelry at her high school, and she became in love with jewelry. And then she got interested in film. Both of these mediums are not what any of us do. We were in ceramics, and her dad's a sculptor, and photography, obviously, with me, and painting with Dad. And so it's interesting how we all kind of find our other path, but we do have this thing that kind of continues about art making or visual studies, I guess you could call it. We include Mom with that.
That's great. She embraced it, because my aunt, she was an oil painter,
Mm-hmm.
and she was never famous or anything, but she created these lifelike oil paintings. I mean, she did one of her daughter. I mean, it looked like a photograph.
Yeah.
And I started to do it. I suck at oil painting, but every now and then when I get my hands on some paints and I have the room, I do it. I think it's the most relaxing, creative way to vent, especially if you're stressed out.
Yeah. Although for me, it stresses me out to put my hand to anything. It completely stresses me out.
Your dad, Bud, is from Wheeling.
Mm-hmm.
Did you spend a lot of time in West Virginia when you were younger?
Yeah, usually Christmases or my grandmother's birthday. Probably about once a year we would go there. It was always kind of a problem because you couldn't get the New York Times there on a Sunday. And so Dad would push us all in the car and go to Ohio to buy the New York Times. In New York, you could get it on Saturday night. So that was like his favorite thing. But it was great for me because I really loved family, and it was a really great family, and there was a lot of love and history in the family. And for Dad, he was always sort of the black sheep, I think, and I think they liked him doing art, but they didn't really understand what he was doing, even though they all had plenty of work of his that he gave them over the years. And he would send them articles and letters when he sold pieces, when he was younger. But they didn't really understand it because they didn't come from that. His father was
he was in the military, wasn't he?
He was in the military, but he also had the Hopkins Ford Motor Company in Wheeling, West Virginia. And so it was a military family, and Dad had polio at 2. So he was like never going to be in the Army. And his brother was 12 years older, and he was very army oriented. So he also was in the army. And so I think that pushed Dad outside, but his father would be in World War I or World War II, and he would send him things from the war. And when he came home, he had all the spoils from the war. So we had sabers from the First World War, and we had Nazi flags and an entire Nazi uniform and all these crazy Nazi things from the Second World War that were very strange to grow up with. You know, it was just, to me,
Wow.
it kind of, I don't know, it put a reality to it that you don't get otherwise. When you look at, we had the place setting, we didn't, but the family had the place setting that Hitler would eat off of, because he didn't trust anything but one place setting because he thought it would be poisoned. So it had a swastika on the back, and it had his initials on. I mean, it was very creepy, but it kind of made you realize that it was real in a way that isn't in books at all. And there were plenty of stories, and Dad had a friend who met Hitler once. But it was interesting just sort of seeing that side of things, because Dad was very liberal. Everybody else was not, except for one cousin at the time, but I think it's changed a bit since then. But his brother, his sister, his father, his mother, everybody was very conservative, and they fought quite a bit about politics. And so Dad wanted to do nothing but get out of there and go to New York.
Totally get that. Your mom, April Kingsley, was known for promoting people of color and women artists when others wouldn't.
Yeah.
Your mom helped launch the careers of Black artists like Jack Whitten, Ed Clark, and Mel Edwards. Why weren't more white people at that time helping to promote and advocate for Black and female artists?
Well, it was the time of the Guerrilla Girls, the 70s. So she's been noted by them over and over about being one of the few art critics and curators who would actually talk about women artists, especially women sculptors. That was a thing that she focused on, because nobody was showing women sculptors, and definitely Black artists. And it's funny, I've gone through her archives. I scanned everything before I gave it to the Archives of American Art. And there are letters from museums to her saying, why do we have to have a separate show of Afro-American abstraction? And she would say back, if you would show them, I wouldn't have to have a separate show. But they weren't showing them. They were just doing the abstract artists, you know, the white guys that Dad hung out with. And she did a whole bunch of Islamic artists in shows, and Greek American. Really interesting. She was kind of interested in showing what people weren't showing. And at Jack Whitten's funeral, it was interesting because I went around the room, and, you know, people were introduced to me as her daughter, and then were like, oh, she didn't put me in the show. And so she kind of like made, you know, them public. It was at PS1, it was a big deal, and it kind of launched the careers of these people who are really the leading guys right now, and women. And when she died, her only wish of her whole life was to have an obituary in the New York Times. And I did the same thing I did with Dad, which is, you know, you write the certain person and at the New York Times, and you say a person of note has died. And with Dad, it was no problem. Like in 20 minutes, I had an interview for him. But with Mom, I was up against it, and nobody was getting back to me, and I was frustrated. So I reached out to everybody that I knew, and it was the women sculptors that really led the brigade to get her this New York Times obit. For her, it was like, that was her dream. I don't know. The New York Times meant a lot to my parents, obviously. Mom once moved to a place in Michigan, and they didn't deliver the Times, so she moved again. Like, she didn't stay. So yeah, so she, you know, reached out quite a bit, but because she was focusing on basically people of color and a little bit of women artists, she couldn't get hired once it became a thing to actually focus on these people, because she was white. So
Wow.
she was kind of forgotten for a long time. And that's also why the Times, I think, didn't want to do it, because she hadn't really done much in that way for so long. So yeah, it was tough. But I think it was a beautiful article. And I think I understand now why she did it, was because then there were all these people who reached out to me who I didn't know or have any idea how to get in touch with to tell them that she had passed. So it all ended well.
Do you think much has changed for Black and women artists in the art scene in terms of promoting their work?
I do. I mean, I think, there's that New York Times article right now about all the Black artists in the museum shows. Jack Whitten was one of them. I think that a lot of museum shows are chosen by galleries. So you get into a big gallery and you have a certain reputation, and the galleries talk to the museums about the shows. It's not the other way. I think women artists have had a harder time now, especially white women artists are having a very hard time. It's just there's so many. I don't know what's going to happen now. I mean, right now there's this big push against any people of color or anybody who's been DEI'd out, so it's hard to tell. But it has felt for a while that the focus was on the people of color and nobody else could have a say. And neither one's right. Really, it should be about the talent, not about the race or the sex.
Mm-hmm. Did your parents have huge egos?
My father certainly did. He was very, what's the word when you're self-involved? For some reason, I always blank on this word, and I think because it describes him. It's a syndrome. Trump has it as well. It'll come to me. But basically, you just want to talk about whatever the next good thing is that you've done to anybody who will listen. Mom was much more quiet and subtle. I mean, she had attitude, she had opinions, and she made them known, but she was never going to toot her own horn.
Your parents' papers are stored in the Smithsonian.
Mm-hmm.
Is that an honor or what?
It's a lot of work. It's a lot of dealing with the people. They don't take everything. And Mom had done an entire, the beginning of a catalog raisonné for Franz Klein, which I offered to them, and they said no, mainly because it's a lot of photographs, which means they have to deal with it in a certain way. But her records are being made into a book that will be very interesting, I think, about Franz Klein and his mature years. But she was the first to really work on that, and then later on it got taken over, and I helped the guy out, which that's a different story. But Franz Klein was very important. He was Dad's best friend, and he was Mom's her dissertation that was focused on him. So she's a Klein expert. And even when she had early dementia, somebody would send her a Klein that they thought was a Klein, and she'd decline it. But she would also say which gallery and which artist it was, which was fascinating. Even when she was losing her memory, she would still know, like, oh, it's the guy. You got to go to this gallery and you'll see it's that person. And it would be. I mean, it was fascinating.
Now, when you're shooting photos, do you really use your cell phone?
I do.
Only your cell phone?
Yes. I used to use a Rolleiflex and many other things, but I have a friend who actually makes the color. He works on the camera part of the phones. And so he lets me know when I should get a new one because it's been updated enough. Now you can take raw images, so I can make them 40 by 40, which is exciting. But yeah, no, I travel around really dark spaces where you don't want to be as a woman alone or a woman with her child. And so it's easy to have something that's not really wanted. It's just a phone. So when I had the Rolleiflex, I liked that because I could be looking down and nobody really knew what I was looking at. So that was kind of fun. Everyone, when they see me, they're like, what is she taking a picture of? There's nothing here. And it's become kind of a party game where I'll be in a room and somebody will hand me their phone and be like, take a picture of something in here. And then I take a picture and then they try to find it. So that's kind of a fun thing. But I've gotten yelled at by, store owners or really restaurant owners. If I go down an alley or behind something, they think I'm from the health department. And I'm there to take pictures of like something they're doing wrong. And then I show them my phone, I show them the pictures, and they go, you're just crazy. Like, walk away.
Do you run your photos through Photoshop or GIMP? Or are they unadulterated?
They're completely prime. What I took, I do not touch them. I print them. I print them on canvas. For years, I printed them on photo paper and mounted them like a photo with a mat and glass and the frame, the whole bit. and people still called them paintings. So I was like, what am I doing? I hate the framing process. Why don't I just mount them like a painting? So I print them on canvas and I stretch them, or I adhere them to a wooden block, and they float from the wall a little bit, but they absolutely look like painting.
So what do you look for in terms of finding images, surfaces, shapes, textures, and colors? Like, are you like specifically looking for the perfect site to snap, or?
Well, I travel to places on purpose that I think will be colorful and interesting.
Mhm.
And this year, like, for example, I went to London, Barcelona, Lisbon, and then Sevilla and Malaga, all sort of southern Spain. And Seville I thought would be really interesting, and it really wasn't that interesting because they don't allow any graffiti. They're very clean. So places that are very clean aren't as interesting to me. Bermuda wasn't as interesting. So I choose the places based on, like, now a lot of these places, Amsterdam in particular and Miami, they have these areas that are just for artists to take over the walls. And so they make murals or they paint on anything. They just kind of go. And I think some of these cities are doing this so that they don't have graffiti elsewhere. But for me, it's a heaven. Then I just go walk around there. In the past, like when I was in art school, I was in Boston, and that's a very clean city. So I would go behind Newbury Street on the alleyway, and I would take pictures of the dumpsters because they were interesting. And it could be a mark that a car made running into it, and it could be graffiti, and it could be just the color of the thing that's chipping off. There's a beautiful movie made about people who paint over graffiti with different random colors. That's sort of it's like almost a Rothko-esque movie because of the way they shot it. Because it's just these sections of color that don't relate to the color behind it, but their job is to make it prettier for the tourists, right? So when Katrina hit New Orleans, I had a great time down there just photographing all of the different colors that they chose to paint over all the things that said fuck Bush or FEMA sucks or whatever it was, or their insurance number or their name or who had died in the building. They just wanted to go and cover it over. And they picked these colors of like lime green and lime blue. And they were just beautiful colors. And they just painted over the graffiti really haphazardly. But to me, it was the best time I ever had shooting in New Orleans, which I do like to go to often to photograph, but sometimes it's a little too clean for me.
You said in an interview that you only shoot images with direct sunlight on them.
Yeah, well, that's preferred.
Mhm.
I go out at the wrong time of day. I go out around noon to 2, highest sun, which is when photographers generally don't go anywhere. And I like to have the brashness of that. Sometimes it's just to make the shadows really black and brighten up the other colors. But occasionally I'll have to photograph even if there's no sun, which, then you lose an element, you lose the shadow portion of it. My daughter, who's gone on trips with me since I was little, since she was little, that she used to sing. We went to London once, and we were in this area of London that had all kinds of graffiti and interesting stuff for me to photograph, but it was really cloudy and drizzly. And so she would sing the Beatles song, "Here Comes the Sun." It's really cute. And it worked, actually. The sun came out for a little bit. But yeah, I prefer high sun and the sunny side of the street for sure.
Your work is global, having taken photographs all over from Portugal, Spain, Greece, Amsterdam, Denmark, Cuba, and the UK. What are your favorite places to shoot?
Well, I've always loved Miami and the Windward Walls. I like Puerto Rico a lot, and like the Bahamas because the color is really kind of purpley blue. I like Italy because it's really red and ochre-y. The sun is different wherever you go. New York has a very black and white color. Like the sun doesn't have a lot of gold to it. So wherever you go, the temperature is different and the color is different of the light overall. But I mean, I'll pretty much find something anywhere. I love California because it has sort of a neutral sunniness to it. um, but New York, I've always gone to because I was raised there. So I go back every year. So that's always a consistent view in my photos. But I try to pick a place every year. Like this year, I think I'm going to try for Morocco because I haven't been to Africa and I haven't seen that kind of color. But Spain, where I was last year, you can see Morocco from there. And it was just, Malaga had everything that I wanted. It had a city, it had a beach, it had great cuisine, it was very neighborhoody. It just kind of felt like a European version of a cross between New York and where I live now. And where I live now is the one place I can't shoot anything. There's nothing to photograph here. It's all pretty and beaches, and I mean, it's gorgeous and the landscape's lovely, but like, that's not my thing. So vistas have never appealed to me at all.
You did a whole series centered around the Berlin Wall.
Mm-hmm.
Was that a political statement?
Not really. It was interesting that there was only one section of it left. Almost felt like a museum, but it was outside. I've been to Berlin twice. The first time I was in the newer section that's very boring, and the second time I was in the older section that's really interesting, and much more neighborhoody, and again, much more to photograph. I like the idea that people were taking back the wall. So I guess in that way it's a little bit political, but I really don't add politics much to my work. Although I am interested in politics. I just don't have it cross over all that often.
Your dad, Bud Hopkins, was known for painting geometric shapes and flat colors and has abstract paintings. You do that, but is that your big focus? Do you focus mostly on shapes and unusual colors?
Well, I think for him, the most important part of his work was the action section. And there were very few paintings of his without this activity or action that he would call it. That was the abstract expressionism coming through. When you look at most color field people, they don't tend to do that. It tends to be all straight color. And he taught me to look at the corners. He taught me to make sure that nobody could escape. And to have this kind of action to them. So I'm more drawn to when photos have some kind of activity. And for me, I like spray paint quite a bit because it lends this sort of natural action to it. I mean, I think he obviously influenced me quite a bit. And we look well together when we have shows together. It does do well. And they're obviously very different. And they're stemming from different areas, of course, but they have the same sensibility for sure.
Is it difficult for artists to get their work seen in galleries around Provincetown?
I would say so. I think the majority of people or gallerists in Provincetown show people from the area. There are a few galleries that don't, but they do have a very specific look. There's a Cuban gallery, like Gallery Cubana, just shows Cuban artists. There's another gallery who has artists from all over, but it's very specific sentiment to it. So, when people are looking for a gallery, they should really research what the gallery shows and why. Because I get, 2 or 3 a week from people all over the world that are saying, will you look at my art? And I say, would you look at our website? Because it actually says clearly we only show Provincetown artists. So, this year I did see an artist at the museum in a show, and I didn't know his work beforehand. And he's a Provincetown artist that I'd never really heard of. And he's very interesting, and I'm interested in pursuing it. And so is Berta. So that might be somebody we add, but we have 40 estates and artists, and it's a lot to maintain, and to try to show everybody every year is quite a thing.
In Charleston, once a month, we have this thing called Art Walk.
Mhm.
And people probably all across the county, come to downtown Charleston to view all of these artworks that businesses that aren't art businesses, they
Mhm.
let artists come set up shop and show off their artwork. It's really great.
Yeah.
You'll have something similar like that in Provincetown?
We do a weekly Provincetown stroll on Friday nights from Memorial Day to Labor Day. Varying different galleries will be open. Some will have openings. We do a 3-week rotation, so we only have 4 shows this summer. A lot of places do 1-week or 2-week rotations, which I find to be a lot of work, but they seem fine with it. We do have a collector who lives in Louisville who only buys Provincetown artists, and he puts them in all the public buildings in Louisville. And he's just a marvel. Like, he's just really interesting. And I don't know, maybe 10 years ago or 8 years ago, I met him, and he really likes going to artist studios and kind of pawing through things and seeing everything. And so every year I take him on a little trip around to all of our artists and show him. He goes around their studios and sort of jumps through all the different things that they've got going on. And it's a lot of fun. And in the end, he's a gay man who's not got children. And so he's going to give everything to the museum that's local. So it's that kind of thing I really love. Somebody who kind of understands how Provincetown, although it's on the outskirts, it really is where people were. Like, all the abstract expressionists came to Provincetown every summer. That's why Dad came, was Franz Klein said, you got to go to Provincetown. And people don't live here all year round necessarily, but they find this to be their home. And I don't know if it's the light or the people or what causes people to want to be here, but it's pretty spectacular because, it's obviously very liberal, very open, very gay in Provincetown.
Yeah, I heard it's a gay mecca.
It's a gay mecca. I mean, I remember sitting at my desk when they made gay marriage legal federally. And I could hear the screams and the parade from downtown, which we are not near. And it was just so fun. I mean, it was just such a great feeling. And when Hillary Clinton was running, she brought Cher to the event in Provincetown with her, the actual Cher. But there were like 150 Chers that were greeting her on the way in. So it's a very fun, very lively, very open place. It's gotten very expensive, mostly because the people who buy there have a lot of money. But they're not straight necessarily. They just have a lot of money. And so it's made it impossible for young artists to come to Provincetown and find any footing at all.
That's the same problem in New York City, isn't it?
It is, but it's a little worse here because there's nothing in the winter. So, like, you can't get a job all year round doing anything that might make, if you could find a year-round rental, which is almost impossible because the rents, you can get a winter rental from October to May, but in May, it goes from, like, let's say $800 a month to $5,000 a week.
God.
Overnight. So you have to move out. I mean, it's hardcore. But New York has a little bit more flexibility. I mean, it's expensive all the time, but not quite like that. And I think there's more jobs in New York. You could work in a restaurant. We have all of our restaurants closed all winter. All of our stores close all winter. They're just we're not winterized in that way.
Will Bud's paintings ever wind up back in West Virginia in some gallery exhibit?
So we do have a show. I looked it up after I spoke with you. We do have a show at Ogilvy. There's a name for it. Tilden Art Center, I want to say. And that's going to be a show of, so Dad worked in collages. So he'd make these small collages and then he would make larger paintings from them. And so it's going to be a show of collages to larger works of not just Dad, but other people. He learned the technique from a friend of his in Provincetown and New Orleans. And so it's going to be a show of a bunch of people who sort of work in that manner from a study kind of thing. His niece, my cousin, is working on trying to get something in Morgantown, but we haven't gotten anywhere with that. And even his alma mater, Oberlin, has sort of resisted. They have a tiny little art space in their museum, but they've resisted having a show of his, and I'm not sure why. But it's hard. I mean, I don't think he is easily accessible to everybody. People get freaked out by abstract art because they don't know what it means and they don't know what they're supposed to think. And the truth is they don't need to think anything. They can just look at it. But it's easier to see a landscape, or it's easier to see a portrait and know what it means. So it's harder in places that don't show that kind of work to get seen.
In West Virginia, Bud Hopkins is probably more known for his involvement investigating and writing about alien abductions than his art. Do you think people need to revisit his paintings and sculptures?
Well, I think he wrote a beautiful memoir called Art, Life, and UFOs, which I had originally titled, he wanted to call it Lamp in the Dark or the Ichabod Man, and I'm not sure why. And I said, no, you got to call it Women, Art, and UFOs. Because I thought that's funny, because he's always had women, he's always had art, and he's always had UFOs. And I thought, who wouldn't pick up that book? But he's like, no, women, no, I'm going to do Art, Life, and UFOs. But it's a very good story of how he was born and raised in Wheeling, and how he went to New York and what happened when he went to New York. And I think that would go a long way for people to understand him a little bit better. It's kind of a name drop book. Like he puts in a lot of things that are not that important, like taking Eleanor Roosevelt around the Museum of Modern Art. Like, that's fine, but like, who cares? There is a couple of funny anecdotes in there. I mean, it's very funny. It's a very fun book. But I had asked him to tell me about his work, to explain it to me. And this was his answer, but it's not much of an answer, actually. But yeah, I mean, I think people who are interested in UFOs, who look at his work, they say, oh, the circles have to do with UFOs, and they don't. He made his first circle painting in 1967, I want to say, when his father died. And it's a black circle. And to me, it actually looks like a camera. But it was, to him, sort of an homage to his father. And I never knew his father, but I knew that they had a contemptive relationship to some degree. But it talks a lot about sort of that and kind of growing up. And there are parts in it that are very raw and truthful. And it's a good read. It's a fun book.
Do you think your dad's work researching UFOs and alien abductions overshadowed his artwork?
Yep. I mean, it's hard to be taken seriously when people think that that's funny. I think right now the UFO stuff is being taken a little more seriously, but when he was doing it,
A lot more seriously.
Like, he went on Oprah, and she said she was going to do this, this, and this, and he was going to bring these people that were really shy about coming out, but they came out because it was Oprah and they trusted her and they loved her, and who doesn't love Oprah? And then she totally went back on what she had agreed with him and had this guy on that just ridiculed everybody that Dad brought, and Dad almost punched her in the back. I mean, he literally had to be held back. He was so upset, and he was ridiculed constantly. But to him, so he had to go. His father wanted him to go to this school in between. He graduated high school at like 16, and his father thought it was too early to go to college, so he should go for 1 year to this military academy. And I don't know if it was part of the military-ness of my family, but Dad absolutely wouldn't even say the word of the school where he went. I mean, he hated it so much, and everybody was a bully, and he was a gimp. Basically, because of polio, he had one leg shorter than the other, so he always kind of walked with a limp. Beautiful man, but like had this kind of gimpiness to him. So I think he was ridiculed, but he was tall, and so he could kind of maybe stand up for himself, but he would try to protect all these little guys that were getting walloped constantly by the bullies. And so that became what we call the Hopkins cripples. So he would try to protect everybody. He would try to make them feel better and tell them that it's okay, that they're going to be fine. And I think with the UFO thing, A, he was fascinated by it, and B, he thought he could help people. Now, he didn't have any degree in psychology, but he knew how to sort of be there for somebody topically. you know,
Mhm.
maybe not deep, but topically. And I think he did do a lot of good. I mean, I've known a lot of these abductees my whole life. And when he did the support group meetings at the house, and Mom and I would disappear into my room, I lived on a different floor. So we'd sort of disappear during the meeting and watch something while they had their meeting and then go up afterwards. They just felt better. And it was him, but it was also them all together in a thing saying, we all had this weird thing happen. So that was really good. And I think he got a lot of notoriety for it and a lot of money because of the books that sort of dwarfed the art thing, because at that time his dealer had committed suicide and he didn't really have another gallery, and he was sort of lost in that, and trying to go up against pop art was really hard. And pop art was really popular and he didn't want to do that, and Colorfield was kind of leaving and losing. So that was tough as well. But I think the UFO thing sort of stood out for him as a way to go forward and still be who he wanted to be, but it did kind of take over, and it did really dwarf his whole reputation. I mean, I can't even get an article written about him that doesn't mention it. Can't do it. Not at all.
In 1987, Intruders found itself on the New York Times bestseller list for 4 weeks. Was your mom, who was also a published author,
Mhm.
jealous?
No, she was his editor. She loved everything he did. She adored my father. She would do anything he wanted. I think she was sort of like me, where we weren't that interested in UFOs.
Mhm.
It kind of comes out funny, when people want to interview me for stuff, and I'm like, it's kind of like being born knowing that God exists and everybody's met him, because you met all these people who met him. Like, it's not interesting. Like, it's just not a mystery. And I think she was kind of like that. She thought for the art world it might be embarrassing. For him, it was fast. She was drawn into whatever he was interested in. But they weren't oddly competitive writing wise, which one could be, but they wrote about such different things. He did do a lot of art history sort of, or art current writing. He wrote for Art Forum quite a bit. He wrote a beautiful thing on a singer from the 30s that he loved, Vaughn Monroe. He was a very interesting writer, and Mom was a great editor, and then he was an editor for her. So they kind of shared that.
Did you get picked on in school due to your dad's interest in the UFO thing?
So if I had been a boy, my name would have been Franz Hopkins, for Franz Klein, and I would have gone to an all Puerto Rican white junior high when I was like 12, and I would have been beaten senselessly. About 80 pounds. White boy named Franz, when Hans and Franz came out on Saturday Night Live. No, I don't think my friends really understood it or knew. I didn't talk about it. And if they knew, they might have been interested, maybe. But they all knew me from my house, which was very art front. It was a lot of art forward. It was a lot of art studio. I would say half of the building was art studio and the other half was like living space. And so I could roller skate for a while in a big long circle in Dad's studio, which I did quite a bit. And so the UFO thing it started before he met my mom. It was in '69 with his first wife when he saw the UFO and got interested in it. But then when he wrote the article for the Village Voice that got changed to the Cosmo article, that was, I want to say, probably early 70s, maybe 74. But I would have been maybe a little later. I should know these dates, but I don't, because I don't pay attention to it. But it was when I was little and he was married to my mom. And that's what changed everything, was the Cosmopolitan article. Because then he got all these letters all over the world and they all said the same thing, and they all had the same markings that they saw inside the ships, which he never published. And that was sort of his way of knowing whether they were truthful or not. And I mean, I never really looked at any of those, but I can tell whether somebody's sabotaging pretty quickly just because of the way they are in the world. There's a particular way that they hold themselves. And I can definitely tell. when somebody comes to me and they're like, I think I was abducted, and I can ask them a couple of questions and pretty much be like, no, you're fine.
In your opinion, do you think that the Earth has been visited by advanced civilizations from other stars and may be responsible for alien abductions?
I think that there's a futuristic thing happening. And I don't know. My theory personally is that we destroy ourselves, which is, by the way, not that far off. And that
True.
there's some civilization that stays somewhere and somehow needs to repopulate. Towards the end of Dad's interest, it was more about women being picked up and made pregnant and then babies taken away. And the freakiest thing he ever told me, which he didn't tell me much because I didn't want to know, but he said there was this little kid that got abducted and he got taken to like a playground in the middle of the night. And there was this little row of like 8 or 10 hybrid children, half alien, half people. And they were like watching him play. And the idea was they didn't know how to play. And that kind of stuff, that's not going to be in a movie, but that's way creepier than any movie that's ever been.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Or somebody getting abducted and waking up in a different outfit than they went to sleep in because a bunch of people got abducted together and they took all the clothes off and put them in a pile and then put them on different people. Like, that's way wackier than anything that's ever been said. But the way I see it is this is very much like what we do to sharks or lab animals or anything in the wild. You pick them up, you tag them, you do what you need to do. You're not angry at them. You're not loving them. You really don't give a crap. You just want to let them do their thing until you need them again, and then you pick them up because you have a tracking device in them. That's all this has ever been. And so to me, it always felt like something futuristic, that we fucked up something here, and then they are trying to fix it with us. But I don't know. I mean, I don't know. And who, it could be any number of things. And there could be another civilization that's just like us, but a little bit off, a little bit different, somewhere farther away, and they're way more sophisticated than we are.
With the Pentagon in the past 5 years acknowledging the existence of unidentified aerial phenomena and Pentagon whistleblowers coming forward about the existence of otherworldly spacecraft and non-human biologics, do you think a conversation needs had about possible human abductions by the pilots of these crafts?
By the pilots of the crafts?
Mm-hmm.
You mean talking to them?
Well, no, just getting the conversation going. I mean,
What would you
for
do?
years, it's like when I was younger, in my early tweens and teens, I used to watch the show Sightings and Unsolved Mysteries. And I believe your dad was on an episode of Sightings.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I used to watch that back in the day. And then I saw the alien autopsy video, and that kind of, I don't know, I wasn't 100% convinced. But like when they start talking about I think there was a UFO that was observed going into the ocean or coming out of the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
It made me think of this documentary I saw from the late 70s, and they were talking about that then in that documentary, and I was like, that's not possible. And when that video came out and they were talking about that, it's like it all came back, and it's like, you know, this is real. This is happening.
Mm-hmm.
And if this is happening, the likelihood of those abductions and cattle mutilations having happened is probably a reality as well.
Yep. What's never worked is people trying to figure out if they hate us or they love us, because they don't do either. And it's not sexy to do a movie like that, but that would be the spookiest thing if you actually did a movie about what this is like. You know, not the drippy, oozing, alien, whatever. It's just this sort of, I don't care. I'm a doctor. I'm looking at a rat in the lab, trying to figure out what I want to do with them. That's way worse than what anybody's ever made a movie of, and they'll never do it. And, you know, I used to say to Dad, like, well, what if they came out about it? And he's like, they wouldn't. What are they going to say? These people come down, they do whatever they want. We can't stop them. We can't shoot them. We don't even know when they're there. They have complete control over us while they're with us, and then they leave. There would be total panic. You can't have total panic.
Mhm.
And that's where it started, was the War of the Worlds was a big deal for him and his father. Well, not for him, he was little, but his father freaked the hell out listening to it and grabbed a bunch of guys and a bunch of, guns and a bunch of trucks and went out to try to protect their family. What are they going to do?
Wow.
What are they going to do? You can't do anything. You can't shoot them. All of the movies that have ever been made about UFOs are crappy. They're just not there. They're just not anything because they're not dealing with the reality, which is so much worse in that it's just what we do to sharks. If you think about it.
What did you think about that adaptation of your dad's book, Intruders, that was on CBS in
Oh God,
'93?
I hated the girl who played me. Oh my God. Mayor Weddingham. So that was a time when Dad was leaving my mom and he was dating a woman who was the sister of an abductee. And so they made my mom into that woman. And that was Mayor Weddingham, I guess. I mean, I very vaguely remember I was probably 15 or 18, 17 or something. But I don't know. I can't even remember enough about what it was about. I remember there being a lot of problems that I had with it, but they weren't like related to UFO stuff. It was just how we were portrayed. I'm working on a memoir called My Life in B-Roll because I was in B-Roll so much with my dad. It's the stuff that they shoot while you're talking. You have a voiceover on another thing, walking up and down the beach, having lunch, having a fake conversation, having a fake shopping trip, whatever it was. That's what we were. And so that show kind of made me a little bit more of a person in his life than I actually was. I mean, I wasn't at all. Like, I was acknowledged as a daughter, but I wasn't treated as one by any means. But I don't remember having that much issue with it. And I don't really remember talking to him about it. That was like in the 80s, wasn't it? 80s or 90s?
'93, I think.
Mayor Weddingham. I loved Mayor Weddingham and St. Elmo's Fire.
No, I just recently saw that on YouTube.
Was it good? Did you like it?
I liked it, but when Hollywood gets its hands on nonfiction, they usually amp it up. It's just like what happened when people got their hands on that Poltergeist, the Doris Byler Poltergeist case, and turned it into the book and later the movie The Entity. I spoke to Dr. Barry Taff 2 years ago. He told me that only 15% of that movie was accurate.
Yeah. Well, that's usually the case. I mean, as
Yeah.
long as they have 75, they feel like they're good, or 85 would be great. But I don't know. It's always interested me why the movie industry won't do something that's more realistic, because I think it would freak out people way more than what they do. But they opt for this sort of sci-fi. And maybe it's just more generally, if you get it more repulsive, it's more interesting. This is more psychological, what they do. And that always freaked me out more than anything gruesome.
So will your memoir be of Mommy Dearest caliber?
It's pretty okay. So it started out pretty anti-dad, I would say. A lot of anger. I mean, my parents were partiers. They had an open marriage. They were very like freewheeling, and they would drug me as a baby with phenobarbital to put me to sleep, which I didn't find out about till much later.
Oh my God.
Which is why I can't sleep. I don't know how to sleep. But I realized towards the end of writing it that what they gave me was really great. And it was these crazy people in their life, these really interesting people. That was the bonus that I got. And I made the most of it. I mean, I was writing about these people from age 10. Dad gave me a book and it was like a blank book and then a book called My Friend Degas. And it was this friend of Degas who would write the stories of Degas. And he said, these are the most interesting people, write down their stories. And I did. And I wasn't much of a writer, but I wrote notes, and I'm still in that life. These are, my friends are in their 90s. They're 99 this summer. They're 96 this summer. These are the people that I knew because my parents were friends with them. And my parents are gone, but they're still around and they're still interesting. And I have parties with 99-year-olds and 18-year-olds, the full gamut, because I find them fascinating.
What do you think of modern art? Is it as daring or shocking as it was in the 60s and 70s?
Well, it depends on what you call modern art. I mean, I like modern art that's like 50s to 70s, maybe. And then there's postmodern, and there's postmodern, and all these genres and all these people doing things. I like art that when I look at it, I feel something, and I don't have to read the label to understand what the hell it's about. That's kind of my bottom line. And I need to be moved in some direction. And I don't need to know why they're doing what they're doing, but I need to like it.
Last year, Tara Shurtleff painted Robert Pattinson as Edward Cullen with a bloody tampon hanging out of his mouth. Is it art or trash? It's all over Facebook and Etsy.
Well,
She's selling it on Etsy.
There's a banana with the duct tape or whatever. I mean, these are headline grabbers. These are interesting for people who maybe don't like art, and they can go ew, or maybe don't like art and they can laugh at it. But it's not, to me, anything interesting that I would spend any time.
I hated the Twilight movies, but I have to say I loved that painting. It's just so messed up that it made it remotely, I guess, for me, culturally worthy. I mean, to young people who love the Twilight movies and books, I mean, they probably think it's an insult, but I just thought,
Is Twilight like a vampire thing? I never saw him. Is that what it's about?
Yeah, it's a vampire type deal.
Okay.
Grace, did you ever get to see John Waters' movie Pecker with Edward Furlong and Christina Ricci by chance?
I've never seen, I don't think, any of John's movies, but now he does say hi to me in Provincetown. So I feel like I'm getting somewhere, but I should actually go and watch them all. So he and my boss are doing a big benefit this summer. So I'm going to have a lot more time with John, but like, he's a hoot. I mean, he's just a hoot. And he's so him. He's never changed. He's always like, he did a benefit last year for one of the arts organizations where he had dinner at the dump. He literally like brought in a chef and chairs and tables, and they ate dinner with him at the dump. It was like for 8 people and sold out in like 2 seconds. I mean, he's adorable. He's fun. He's funny. He's wild. But no, I've never seen any of his movies, unfortunately.
In that movie, Pecker, Edward Furlong said in it, as Pecker, he said that art is everywhere. Do you agree?
I think it is. I think that people can open their eyes or not. I think there's always something gorgeous to look at, or sad, or happy, or neutral. But most of the people in the world go along without opening their eyes to anything.
Your dad's ex-wife, Carol Rainey, was very involved in his research into alien abductions. Why do you think she became a doubting Thomas later in her life? About all that.
He hated him. She was very angry that he left her. And she was very crazy. She was very litigious and very suspicious of everybody. She had a horrible childhood and a horrible motherhood. And her daughter had a horrible childhood and horrible motherhood. And it's going to continue on for a while. I don't know. I mean, I think when you meet Dad, and she was his third wife, but he'd had countless girlfriends all through. When you meet him, he's so charming, and he sweeps you up, and you just want to have a minute of his time. And while he's looking at you, you feel like everything. And when he doesn't look at you anymore, you feel like trash. And so she wanted to hurt him. And she did. And she could. Because she had a camera. And none of his other wives did. So
the marriage ended nasty?
Very.
In your opinion, do you think Linda Napolitano was being honest about being abducted by aliens in 1989?
I have no idea. I mean, I know Linda. I know her very well. I'm not sure if she ever gained anything from this. If it's some big giant hoax, there wasn't a big pile of money at the end of it. There was no reason to do it. She just came from a very kind of basic Italian childhood lifestyle, and she continued that throughout. And she's lovely, there's a little Sopranos to her, not that they were involved in anything, but like there's that deep Italian family oriented situation. I don't know. I mean, if she did, it's a pretty big hoax, pretty wild hoax with a lot of witnesses. If she didn't, then she had a really weird experience that
It
nobody.
impacted her kid.
Yeah, and her kid. I don't know. At that point, I was pretty far out of Dad's UFO life. I mean, Debbie of the second book, yeah, Debbie of the second book, I was much more involved in. She would come and babysit me, and I knew her pretty well. Linda, I knew less of, but she always seemed very nice and very sweet, and not. There's nothing for these people to gain by coming out with some crazy story. I mean, Whitley Strieber maybe had a lot to gain, and I don't know. I really don't know about his story, but I think nobody else has anything to really kind of gain. And they had everything to lose. And all the people I always met had everything to lose and nothing to gain. And it always struck me that they were willing to come out, but I think they wanted to come out and say, this is kind of okay, and you're going to exist. And you're going to be fine, even if it's happening. And
Did you get to meet John Mack?
I did. I like John. Dave Jacobs and John were good friends, basically, for Dad. Dad liked the idea of Harvard. He always wanted some kind of bigger institution to say, yes, this is happening. So he liked John's involvement with Harvard. I mean, I don't know anything about John's book. I don't know anything about his death. I really lost touch with all of that. Like, I just was so involved with Dad's art, and I wasn't really ever interested in the UFO thing that he didn't tell me if things happened. But I liked him when I met him. He seemed fine.
I'm halfway through John Mack's audiobook, Abducted, and I'm sad to say I like it.
Mm-hmm.
I usually do 5 questions, but because you're a photo artist, I thought I'd get your thoughts on 5 famous photographers in one sentence. Robert Mapplethorpe.
Beautiful printer. Man, he's amazing.
Herberitz.
I don't know that person.
Annie Leibovitz.
Annie, I mean, that's not my thing. I don't do people, but she does them pretty good.
David LaChapelle.
I don't know that artist.
Andy Warhol.
Not my fave. I mean, I got a lot of issues with Andy. I just don't think he did a lot of the work himself,
That's what I've read. I mean, he had a lot of assistants, and he slapped his name on just about everything, but he had sometimes limited, especially his movies.
Mm-hmm. I think he was a scene, I think people liked the scene. I mean, the only work of his that really kind of moved me was the electric chair series and the series about the car accident, because you look at each one and you're like, it's going to be different in the next one I look at the same fucking photograph, but your heart goes to like have it be different. So those I liked, but the rest were just sort of repetitive and not interesting to me.
I want to thank my special guest, Grace Hopkins, for coming on Mothman in the Bible Belt to discuss her photography, life, and ties to the Mountain State. You can find her work at www.abstractphotos.com. Hopkins was unable to comment on Netflix's The Manhattan Alien Abduction miniseries due to a pending lawsuit. For Mothman in the Bible Belt podcast outlet updates, guest bios, episode breakdowns, and links to social media, please check us out on the web at www.mothmaninthebiblebelt.com. Thanks for listening.